you're not tired. You're exhausted inside and no one has explained to you why. Have you ever felt tired of simply existing, as if life is passing you by and you can barely keep up? This feeling goes far beyond physical fatigue. It is an exhaustion that corrodes inside, a silent emotional overload that few can see. And the worst part? Society insists that you keep producing, even when the soul asks for a break. What you feel is not laziness or weakness, but a sign that something needs to be understood. Every accumulated micro-frustration, every internal demand, every moment of isolation leaves deep marks, and the science of psychology shows that our brain reacts to all of this in surprising ways. Recognizing this reality is the first step to regaining authenticity and alignment with one's own life. In this content, we'll explore together how emotional exhaustion, anhedonia, and isolation manifest themselves, and what can be done to turn that fatigue into opportunities for growth, meaning, and even moments of awe, that wonder that reignites life. Get ready to understand the psychology behind existential fatigue and discover ways to reconnect with yourself. Have you ever woken up after hours of sleep but feel like you've run an emotional marathon? This feeling goes beyond physical fatigue. It is the exhaustion of the soul, that silent overload that cannot be solved with a pillow or coffee. It's as if each day asks for more energy than you have. And yet, we keep trying to cope, pushing our minds forward without realizing the real impact. This deep fatigue drains motivation, reducing the ability to feel pleasure and causing a kind of internal blockage. Words like emotional exhaustion and overwhelm are not exaggerations. They describe the invisible pressure that builds up, undermining joy and weighing everything down. Small daily tasks can feel like mountains. What was once simple now requires extra effort. The first step in dealing with this is to recognize that it is not weakness. Listening to your body and mind is essential. Try setting aside a few minutes for meditation or a mindful walk, even a short one. These small moments help you restart the connection with yourself and realize where the biological reward has been lost, making room to start regaining energy in a real and genuine way. Sometimes, we don't even realize it, but it's the small frustrations of everyday life that wear us out the most. That subtle criticism, the project that did not go as expected, or even the endless traffic add up, forming an invisible weight. Each micro-trauma is like a grain of sand placed in the backpack of the soul. At first, it seems light, but over time, it becomes unbearable. The cumulative effect of this is silent and treacherous. The mind begins to adapt, creating defense mechanisms that often isolate or anesthetize our emotions. That's when the overload arises, and suddenly, you find yourself reacting with irritation or apathy in situations that were once simple. Recognizing this accumulation is the first step to not being crushed by it. A practical way to deal with this is to create short daily evaluation breaks. Ask yourself, what really affected me today? And record it. This habit helps you identify patterns and release the energy that was being drained without realizing it. By transforming micro-traumas into awareness, you give space for acceptance and begin to regain lost emotional strength. When emotional overload sets in, the mind begins to react in ways that we often don't realize. You may feel more irritable, distracted, or even unwilling to engage with the world. It's as if your brain says, "Calm down, I need to protect you," creating internal barriers to deal with the accumulated weight. This adaptation is a form of survival, but it also leaves a sense of disconnection. It is common for thoughts to slow down, simple decisions to seem complex, and motivation to disappear. Emotional exhaustion even interferes with the perception of pleasure, and activities that were once enjoyable start to look like tasks. This is the point at which anhedonia begins to appear. The brain is saving energy and, therefore, reduces the response to biological reward. To cope with this impact, it's essential to recognize warning signs and validate your emotions without judgment. Simple breathing techniques, therapeutic writing or conversations with someone you trust help relieve tension and regain mental clarity. Small gestures, such as noticing what arouses wonder, awe, or genuine joy, already begin to reverse the psychological wear and tear and reconnect you with life. Exhaustion is not only emotional, it has a direct reflection on the body and brain. When we go through long periods of overload, levels of dopamine, that neurotransmitter linked to motivation and pleasure, decrease. That is why, even in the face of things that were once rewarding, we feel little desire or interest. Our biological system is literally depleted. This decrease in dopamine directly impacts biological reward. Small victories or moments of pleasure no longer generate the same effect as before, creating a cycle of discouragement and frustration. The brain, in response, seeks to conserve energy, prioritizing survival over motivation. And it is precisely at this point that many confuse exhaustion with laziness, a dangerous myth that we need to demystify. To start reversing this, simple actions can help stimulate motivation naturally: short walks outdoors, exposure to sunlight, guided meditation, or even listening to music that awakens awe. Recognizing that the body needs biological support is essential to restore energy and make room for pleasure to make sense in the routine again. Many people see deep tiredness as a sign of weakness, but the truth is quite the opposite. When the mind and body are exhausted, it is because they have been too active, trying to cope with constant emotional and psychological demands. Exhaustion is actually an indicator of prolonged effort, a silent metal that few recognize. Confusing exhaustion with laziness only increases guilt and isolation. Each time you force yourself to continue despite fatigue, your body responds by decreasing motivation, and the feeling of anhedonia intensifies. It's a cycle that drains energy and erodes self-esteem, making it hard to realize that what you need is care, not judgment. One practical approach is to start redefining the concept of productivity. Conscious breaks, moments of emotional rest, and daily microachievements help reduce overwhelm. Recognizing that exhaustion is a sign of dedication and not weakness is an essential step to regain authenticity, relieve guilt, and re-establish internal balance. We live in a culture that celebrates productivity as if it were a badge of honor, while rest is seen almost as luxury or laziness. We're constantly connected, answering emails, messages, and external demands, and this creates a sense of urgency that never ends. The result? Constant overload and emotional exhaustion without even realizing it. This external pressure causes many to ignore clear signs of wear. Rest is neglected, and the mind learns to disconnect in order to survive, causing isolation and a feeling of emptiness. Each attempt to keep pace increases the risk of anhedonia, making the pleasure of the little things almost imperceptible. The body and mind ask for a break, but society insists on moving forward. One way to resist this pressure is to redefine priorities. Small actions, such as setting times without a cell phone, practicing light exercises, or reserving moments for genuine leisure, help to balance the scales. Valuing rest is not weakness, it is recognizing that authenticity and alignment with your personal values are essential to maintaining energy and well-being. When exhaustion becomes chronic, the effects go far beyond tiredness. Anhedonia appears, that inability to feel pleasure in things that once enchanted us. Eating, socializing, or even engaging in hobbies ceases to generate joy. It is as if a layer of gray covered the moments that once brought light, leaving life opaque. Social isolation is another natural consequence of this weariness. The mind seeks protection by moving away from stimuli that seem to require too much energy. Friends, family, and even co-workers can seem distant, and you may feel alone even in the midst of people. This feeling of emptiness feeds the cycle of exhaustion, making each interaction more difficult. One way to start breaking this pattern is to allow yourself small, meaningful connections. A coffee with someone you trust, a walk in silence contemplating nature, or even a hobby that awakens awe can reconnect you with pleasure and life. Recognizing these warning signs is the first step to transforming isolation and emptiness into opportunities for acceptance and self-knowledge. In the midst of exhaustion and emptiness, it is common to ask that unsettling question: what is the point of all this? Far from being discouragement, this reflection indicates awareness. It is the beginning of awakening to something greater, realizing that continuing on autopilot does not satisfy the soul. This questioning is an invitation to look inside and identify what really matters. This search for meaning can be transformative. This is when we begin to realize that habits, relationships, and daily choices directly reflect on our emotional well-being. Every little adjustment, such as prioritizing activities that bring genuine pleasure or practicing gratitude, contributes to getting out of the cycle of exhaustion and reconnecting with life itself. To put this into practice, start by listing what brings real meaning to your day. It can be a deep conversation, writing about your experiences, or even contemplating nature and opening yourself up to wonder or awe. This awakening is the first concrete step to transform fatigue and overload into energy aligned with your values and purposes. When our actions reflect our deepest values and beliefs, life takes on another lightness. Acting authentically is not only about being honest with others, but especially with yourself. Each choice aligned with its principles works as an internal reinforcement, returning energy and meaning to the routine that once seemed draining. Alignment brings clarity and reduces internal conflicts. You realize that saying no to something that doesn't resonate with you is not selfishness, but care for yourself. Small acts of coherence, such as prioritizing activities that bring purpose or avoiding emotionally draining situations, become sources of motivation and genuine pleasure. A powerful practice is to reflect daily: do my actions today reflect my values? Small adjustments already create a significant impact, making room for moments of biological reward and strengthening the feeling of control over one's own life. Aligning attitudes and beliefs is transforming exhaustion into conscious and sustainable energy. We often ignore the fatigue of the soul, focusing only on fulfilling tasks and maintaining the routine. But emotional rest is as essential as physical rest. Listening to exhaustion means noticing subtle signs: irritability, lack of concentration, or loss of interest. Respecting these signs is not weakness, it is a survival strategy. Paying attention to emotional health includes simple but powerful practices: mindful breaks, meditation, writing about feelings, or even a relaxing bath can restore balance. It is in these moments that the mind reorganizes itself, allowing the body and psyche to recharge, preparing you to better deal with what comes next. Start small: take a few minutes a day to disconnect from external demands and reconnect with yourself. Listening to exhaustion helps prevent isolation, strengthens resilience, and paves the way for transformation, transforming fatigue into an opportunity to live more consciously and satisfactorily. Even in the midst of the exhausting routine, it is possible to rediscover pleasure through small moments of wonder or awe. It could be a sunset that you barely noticed, a song that plays deeply, or a conversation that warms the soul. These moments work like small injections of emotional energy, awakening feelings that the overload had hidden. These moments remind us that life has nuances that go beyond obligations. Reconnecting with them activates biological reward, reignites motivation, and helps break the cycle of anhedonia. In addition, it teaches us to value the present, bringing a feeling of fullness even on difficult days. To cultivate this wonder, start by observing small things: smiling at strangers, listening to music that evokes fond memories, or exploring a new place in your city. These are simple gestures, but they generate a profound impact, helping the mind to regain pleasure, energy, and connection with life in a natural and continuous way. Reaching the end point of this journey, we realize that exhaustion is not the enemy, but a compass indicating that something needs to be adjusted. Accepting fatigue as part of the process allows you to see opportunities for transformation and growth, instead of just feeling exhaustion and frustration. This awareness is reborn when we are able to integrate the learnings from each experience, recognizing emotional exhaustion, respecting limits, seeking authenticity, and small doses of wonder-awe. By doing so, life ceases to be a burden and begins to offer pathways to renewed energy and real meaning. The next step is simple but profound: practice daily acceptance, recognize your limitations, and celebrate small breakthroughs. With this, each challenge becomes an invitation to live with more presence, joy, and purpose, transforming exhaustion into an opportunity to genuinely reconnect with yourself. Now that you've been on this journey, it's time to reflect. What signs of emotional exhaustion have you been ignoring? What would your life be like if you paid attention to your soul, respecting boundaries, and seeking authenticity? Small daily changes can turn overload into energy and wonder, creating moments of pleasure and meaning. Ask yourself, am I aligned with my values or just following external expectations? Am I allowing my mind and body to recover, or do I keep pushing the limit without listening to my signals? These questions are powerful, because they awaken awareness and open space for real transformation. If this content has brought insights to your life, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Thus, you will follow more reflections on psychology, well-being, and practical ways to transform exhaustion into opportunities to live fully, with purpose, energy, and pleasure.